zip through this presentation in about 15 minutes. It's pretty straightforward. This will be something that you're either tremendously interested in or not interested. I don't think there's middle ground. We're probably a different kind of company than you would typically see in a pitch like this. We just finished our third round of funding, so we're at a fairly formal stage. I'm assuming a lot of the companies that come here are true startup. Yeah, a little bit earlier. Okay, well, let's get going. How about slide number 1? The premise of our company is that we are starting to really struggle with this problem of plastics and plastic waste. Literally, the world is awash in plastic. Staggering numbers come out all the time. You've seen this Ellen MacArthur Foundation quoting by 2050 there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Staggering number out a couple of weeks ago. Not only is virtually every piece of plastic ever made still with us, but most of that plastic was made in the last 15 years. That's how fast this plastic problem is accumulating. And plastic consumption is still growing about 1.5 times global GDP. So we're just now starting to see the kind of the culmination of this, and finally people are sort of figuring it out, that we've got to do something differently. So that's how Green Dot was formed. We set out to tackle this problem of plastic pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, CO2 emission, fossil fuel consumption, all of this related to plastic. Okay, you're reading the same headlines that I am, as I just mentioned, and 2 months ago it was the cover of National Geographic. There's not a week that goes by that there's not something on PBS, stories all the time in the Wall Street Journal or whatever about now the economic impact of plastic and the problem with plastic. So people around the world are reading this, people around the world are writing about it, and now people around the world are investing in companies like ours to begin to work on this problem. As a result, the share of the plastic market contributed by bioplastics, so we'll talk in a minute what bioplastics means, but it's starting to increase pretty dramatically. So while traditional plastics may be growing at 5% a year, which is still good, great growth for a very mature kind of industry, bioplastics are growing at 30% or more. And by 2030, predicted to be as much as 30 or 40% of the plastics market. So this is a very, very large market, and it's starting to grow very fast. So what is Green Dot? I'll start with what's a day in our life look like. There is hardly a week that goes by that we don't get an inbound inquiry from a Fortune 500 or a Global 500 kind of company. We're now 8 years old. We started as purely an R&D company. Bioplastics in any significant way is only about 10 years old. So we are clearly considered one of the early names. And while we're still small, and I would still say we operate very much like a startup company, we've been around long enough, and given my background in plastics, people do think of us as a thought leader. They recognize us as one of the early industry kind of standards, if you will, for bioplastics. We're also one of those companies that's purely bioplastics. That's all we do. So unlike if you pick up the phone and call BASF or DuPont or something, they may have some business in bioplastics, but it's a very, very small part of what the company does. But for us, this is all we do. And as a result, all of those names up there are people that we're either selling to already, or we are working with them on a development project. And of course, there are any number of other companies that we're working on as well, but these are the names that you recognize.
So 3D systems, are you doing that with their 3D printing?
Yeah, yeah. And we are not selling the 3D systems now. Actually, we just ordered equipment to make our own 3D filament.
Got it.
But we sell to Suncast, and Reebok, and Rockefeller, and John Deere, Siemens, and Diageo, and Mattel. Most of those names up there are people we actually do business with. Okay? How do we work with these customers? Well, we are raw material producers. We're material scientists as a company. We make something called plastic pellets that we put into the value chain, and converters that either mold it, shape it, extrude it, or something like that. So we work, like with this company, we have some patented technology around putting scents and flavors and attractants into plastic that's plant-based instead of petroleum-based. Non-toxic, NSF certified, child safe, things like that. So every one of those is a formula that we've invented. We're putting organic materials into non-traditional plastics for their pet toys. The next slide, a project that we did with John Deere last year, and it won the Bio-Based Product of the Year award in San Diego late 2017. These toys that went into the John Deere line are 100% plant-based. So we make a formula that is based on plastic derived from sugarcane, and we use corn cob waste as an ag waste as a filler to give the plastic strength. As a result, this is 100% plant-based, has a negative carbon footprint, meaning that it actually absorbed more carbon growing the sugar cane, growing the corn or whatever, than used in making the plastic. Very innovative, great story for kids, great story for moms, safe, non-toxic, made in America, NSF child safe certified, no phthalates, no heavy metals, etc., etc. Throughout the customer stories that I'll tell you about, that's sort of the theme, you know. What's the story? How is it better for the planet? How is it better for the humans that interact with it? Next example I brought, we've been working with one of the top 3 global footwear manufacturers to make a completely biodegradable and compostable shoe. I think it will launch this year. We've reached the point that thousands of pairs have been made for beta testing. 7 different testing facilities and universities have tested the compostability, meaning the ability to shred it, put it into a composting facility at the end of its life, and it converts back to CO2 and carbon. We make a variety of products today. Products based on starch, products based on proteins, products with wood and natural fiber, composite fillers. And you can see, you know, what the message is about them. Why are they better? And this is important because when we get to the brand owners, they have different ideas why they want to make the conversion from a traditional petroleum-based plastic to a plant-based plastic. Some of it's differentiation, some of it's enhancing their brand image, some of it is to try to meet some sustainability goals. Big companies today, I don't think you're going to find a single company in the Fortune 500 that doesn't have somebody that's not called VP of Sustainability or Chief Sustainability Officer. To some companies that just means that they make the office smart and it uses less power or something like that, which is fine. Clearly that's a form of sustainability. Maybe it's a LEED certified building. But other companies are taking that to their product. And so if you're familiar with maybe a company like Patagonia or something, you know, or one of these companies where the environmental part of their message is at the core. 7th generation, method cleaners. These are big companies that have been built on some kind of sustainability message. And we can talk to them about why what we're doing is better. Is it a greenhouse gas story? Is it a plant-based? renewable story? Is it an end of life, biodegradation, composting story? Or in some cases, it's all the above. Okay? With the completion of our last fundraising round, the company is now at an inflection point and really moving forward quickly. As I mentioned, we started what I call Green Dot Bioplastics 1.0 back in 2011. We were purely an R&D company. We were trying to develop the science around the world's first biodegradable rubber. We were successful doing that. We got a composition of matter patent in 23 claims or something like that, almost unheard of with the patent office. And we were able to scale that up and manufacture. We got to revenue in the first year for the company, which is pretty difficult. Based on that success, we went out and did an A round with 2 more follow-on rights offerings or following on with those investors that came back in 2 more times. We did an acquisition. We bought the bioplastics division of a publicly traded company, which was fairly difficult for a startup with essentially no revenue. We went into full-scale manufacturing, full-scale R&D. We have assets with replacement value of $20 million or something like that. And we began to market and sell these products that we were developing along the way. Now, with Green Dot 3.0, we make yet another inflection, and we're moving very strongly into single-use, disposable applications. Throwaway plastic. More than half of all the plastic used is in throwaway, one-time. Look at all this crap sitting around the room, you know, I mean, go to Home Depot, go to the grocery store, I mean, everything comes in plastic, whether it's a film, whether it's a foam. You know, your car has about 200 pounds of plastic in it. If you go to a hospital, we have a surgeon who was one of our original investors. He said for every surgery, he fills 6 construction-sized waste containers with plastic trash. Phenomenal. We Americans are really good at making a lot of trash. So we're going to move much more heavily now into these single-use, disposable, throwaway items. We'll continue with our organic growth, and I'll show you in a minute. We've had some very significant scientific breakthrough. We're now implementing against that as well. Okay, next slide up, IP. This is really, to some extent, probably all you need to know about what we're doing. This is why our institutional investors came on board. We have invented a low-cost marine degradable polymer, meaning that if this plastic ends up in the ocean, it will biodegrade in the ocean, not just in an industrial composting facility. And it's cheap. And so we think we will be able to go after much of the global polystyrene market, $25 billion market. Our raw material cost is less than styrene monomer and ethyl benzene. There's about 200 million pounds of this market already existing today in some shape or form. So we filed a patent on that technology. We were just issued a patent that covers our starch composites. We have filed a patent on the ability to put these attractants and repellents into different plastic materials. We launched a company last year which puts attractants into a biodegradable pellet for deer hunters to bring in deer, for deer season. I don't care that much about attracting deer, but there are about 1,000 times as many people that would like to repel deer and keep them out of their garden. So right now we're moving much more into repellents than attractants. And then our original composition of matter patent on the original elastomer will be expanded this year. We're finding some cheaper ways to make that and some ways to use some other plant-based raw materials. So this is a big story. I mean, this is serious IP. And if we're remotely successful with this, I wouldn't be surprised that somebody offers to write us a check and take it from here. But if they don't do that, this really sets the stage even for an IPO in the future, as opposed to just continuing to go through more VC rounds or private equity. This is really a big deal.
When it degrades in the ocean, what does it convert back to?
Yeah, biodegradation by definition means that the microbes convert the carbon to CO2.
Okay.
So that's how you actually measure it and do the test. And to be considered compostable, it has to convert 90% of the carbon in 180 days through biological activity. So it's pretty severe. Cotton won't degrade that fast. So when we're doing these shoes, for example, the plastic has been long biodegraded before the cotton ever gets there. Bugs don't like to eat cotton. It's about the same rate of degradation as cardboard, which is also not super fast. So yeah, it's a good question. Okay. This is very much a de-risked investment. In fact, I would say that there is no risk in the classical sense of a startup company because we're so far beyond that. We may not meet our goals, it may not make anybody any money, we could do a terrible job managing it, and we could go broke or something. But the fundamental big risk of a startup is this really going to be a company? Are they ever going to get this off the ground? Are they going to have customers? Are they going to sell something? We're pretty far past that. We're expecting about $3 million in revenue this year. We've grown from 1 customer to 40 customers. We did our first acquisition. We have no debt. We have full-scale manufacturing. We have a state-of-the-art R&D facility. These are our facilities, by the way. Good IP.
Where's your home base?
Our head office is in Emporia, Kansas. Our manufacturing facility is in Onega, Kansas, and our product development laboratory facility is in Ottawa, Kansas. So, I'll forgive you if those aren't on your weekly travel route. It's a long story how we've ended up in all these places. Some of it was because of the acquisition. A lot of it is because of where people live, and the right people is more important to me than the only thing it costs me is an hour in the car, going all over the place. But great processes and designs. We've now just completed a major funding round with institutional investors. This is the first time we brought on institutional investors. We got this far with private individuals that really believed in what we were doing. It's quite an eclectic mix. I mean, we've got the guy that's Barron's #1 rated hedge fund manager 2 years in a row. We've got members of the rock band Pearl Jam. We've got Germans. We've got doctors in Orlando. But now we finally brought on true institutional investors, and I'm real happy about that. But I'm also real happy we were able to get 6 or 7 years into this before we did that.
What's your total raise been today?
I'll get to that in the next slide or so. Importantly for you, we closed this round in, I think it was January 30th, and we had the first board meeting February 8th. We're already about $700,000 into implementing the new strategic implementation plan. We're ordering equipment to expand that low-cost marine degradable polymer. We have equipment coming from Germany to make 3D filament and sheet. We've hired the people that we set out to hire as part of the commitment on this fundraising round. So we've been blasted against this plan now for 4 months. And you guys, if you come in now, would be the beneficiary of that. I mean, there's a whole bunch of execution risk that's off the table. Could we buy $500,000 of equipment and buy it at the right price and get it from Germany and get it fast enough that we can use it, things like that? Those are gone. Could we hire the right people? They're already on board. So I would hope you would think of this as huge, because so much of the execution of the strategic plan, we've moved past that. Okay. I do want to spend a couple of minutes on the board of directors, because in a company this size and this place in its life, I don't think you'll ever see a board of directors like this. Very, very, very helpful people to me. Mark Mahoney was the original idea behind this. Mark is an investment banker. He has his own private asset management company, $2 billion of assets under management. He's a director at Apollo, president of the Surfrider Foundation, which is how he got involved in this. Matt McKenna represents Open Prairie. We'll talk about that in a minute, one of our VCs. Matt was President Obama's Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. He was an advisor to the USDA. He was president of Keep America Beautiful. He's a professor at both Georgetown and at, I think Wharton, but I'm not sure. And he was CFO of PepsiCo back in his work days. Dwayne is our board chairman. Dwayne was president of the Kansas Bioscience Authority, or CEO. He was CEO of Payless Shoes a number of years ago. He founded Fulcrum Venture Capital Group with some stellar backing. Chris is our resident engineer on the board. Chris is just a fantastic engineer. He started his career at Rolls-Royce. I worked with him at Dow for a number of years. About 10 years ago, he founded an architectural composite manufacturing company. So he's very helpful to me on manufacturing related things. My background, before I moved back to the US and started this company, I was CEO of a $5 billion company called Styron. It was a wholly owned subsidiary of Dow Chemical. We sold that to Bain Capital. At the time, it was one of the largest transactions going on in New York at that time. Before that, I was president and chairman of Dow's joint venture with LG Group in Seoul, Korea. I've also been general manager of Dow's engineering plastics business, $2 billion business, general manager of the fiber business, general manager of the urethane business. So my 30 years at Dow, nearly all of it was in plastics. And it was because of that experience that I was so intrigued about the idea of starting this company. That and a good relationship I had with some scientists at the Kansas Bioscience Authority. I'll speed up here a little bit. Okay, this round was our Series A preferred round. $6.5 million. And for a variety of reasons that I'm not sure I can explain, we ended up with about $200,000 unsold when we closed. And it was close enough, and it was a bit of a surprise. Literally, a couple of days before the closing, we went through and tallied up all the numbers, and we were a couple $100,000 short. So that's why I'm here tonight. Out of this $6.5 million round, there's about $200,000. Maybe it's on the next slide. I'll tell you exactly, but somewhere around $200,000. This round was led by Fulcrum, Open Prairie out of Effingham, Illinois. This is a big kind of ag tech rural opportunity fund. They've been around for about 30 years. We're part of a new, I think they call it the Rural Opportunity 3 Fund. It's a $100 million fund or something. Fulcrum has outstanding relationships with Bayer, Syngenta, Monsanto, all of these ag companies because of their former relationship with the Kansas Bioscience Authority. Fulcrum just recently led a deal with Monsanto on one of their spin-outs. So while they haven't been around very long, really top guys. You may know Kevin Lockett, used to play for the Chiefs. He was the CFO of the Kansas Bioscience Authority. He's on the board of, he may be on the board of Commerce Bank, some bank in Kansas City. He's also a partner in Fulcrum. And one other guy, I'm losing his name right now. IIM is out in Johnson County. They're an angel investor group like you guys. They came in for $500,000. And then some of our current investors tossed in some change at the last minute too. Okay, so what do we got? We have 225,685 shares available, $220,000, 98 cents a share. This is a preferred round. It carries an 8% preferred dividend, and of course, it's number one on the liquidation preference. So, you guys know what's a good deal, what you think's a good deal or whatever, but this is pretty unheard of that you could come in after all the heavy lifting's been done. I mean, the VCs spent 8 months doing due diligence, the data rooms, you know, we had a small boutique investment bank in New York that handled the transaction. A lot of legal costs, not surprisingly, with that many fingers in the pie. So you would be the beneficiary of all of that. It's done, documents complete, nothing for you to do other than maybe go back into, we could open the old data room and you could go in there and look around and do whatever you wanted, have access to the people the same as anybody else. But the negotiation's over, so there's nothing more to be done on the negotiation side.
Is this fully participating as like common stock with a preferred dividend? It's fully participating in equity, it's not just a preferred stock.
Yeah. It's the senior equity on the cap table. Okay, I guess that's kind of it. This is my quote, and this goes back to why we started this. People used to ask me, and you know, coming from a lifetime in petrochemicals, we were very lucky as humans, or maybe unlucky if we end up all dead on the planet, but you know, we had access to this thing called petroleum, and it has literally driven us as human beings for a century in fuel, fiber, pharma, ag, raw materials. I mean, we get so much from petroleum, and those molecules were so cheap, but they're not so cheap anymore. And while we're currently in a bit of a glut with fracking and whatnot, you know, that glut will be gone in 10 years or 20 years or whatever, like every other oil boom and bust. And so will oil go back to $150 a barrel? I don't know. Maybe next time it goes to $500 a barrel. I mean, who knows where all that's going to go. But the great news is that because oil has done these spikes, scientists were working for quite a long time now on getting other molecules that we can make something out of. And if we can make a molecule cheaply and we can polymerize it, we can potentially turn it into plastic. And that's what's been happening. So we're making plastic out of starches, out of carbohydrates, and the molecule doesn't know where it came from. It just knows it's a molecule. And so if you can extract it, link it together, and so for the first time ever, we have more and more molecules to make different kind of plastic materials. It's an exciting time. I wish I was a lot younger, you know, not only to work on this longer, but also to have a chance to see the benefit to humankind. But it's really an amazing thing. The other thing about Green Dot that's different from probably a lot of the startup pitches you see, this company has a 100-year runway. I mean, this is where DuPont or Dow was 120 years ago. This is where DuPont was 225 years ago. This isn't an app. It's not a real estate development. I mean, this is science. This is technology. And whether Green Dot will be owned by Fulcrum and Open Prairie, you know, 100 years from now, it's unlikely. But Green Dot as a company and as a name can continue for generations. So, this is really laying the foundation for.
What are the institutional investors looking to do? Are they taking your lead and saying, hey, this is a play for them to improve the environment as well as, obviously there are some money expectations, but.
I don't think they care that much about the environment.
That's part of the question, but the other part of it is, okay, the right deal comes along, what prevents a DuPont from coming in and say, this is disruptive to us, so we're gonna squish this thing.
I hope so. I hope they come in. Because I worked for one of those companies for a long time. The fastest way to squish us is with a checkbook.
Right.
It would cost DuPont $50-60 million to get to where we got. Because they can't give a purchase order for a box of Kleenex without it costing $500,
Right.
And to set up labs, to set up a prototype facility, like I said, just to duplicate what we have is probably $20 million. And then you got scientists. We always figured our head cost at $500,000 a year for a scientist, between their lab space and their salary and benefits. So it's really expensive for those big companies to try to do this, and much faster, much cheaper to just come write a check. I don't think it'll be one of those big chemical companies, but it might be one of the big ag companies. ADM, we've had ongoing conversations with them now for years. Cargill, we know them very well. They have sugars and proteins and starches. They have plants to make that. They extract those molecules every day. This is probably a much more interesting space for them. If you can turn wheat into something that sells for $3 a pound instead of 5 cents a pound, that's a pretty interesting upgrade.
What are your margins?
Our gross margin is about 50%, so margin over material. Obviously, we have a lot of expenses as an early stage startup company. We were cash break even last quarter if you subtract the one-time costs associated with fundraising, closing, and that sort of thing. We'll probably be cash positive this quarter, but there'll be quarters when we're not, if we're buying a major piece of equipment or
So
something.
what was the overall valuation of your company?
$20 million pre-money, a little bit less than 20 million, post-money 26.
And there's no other competitors out there that do what you do.
There are other companies that play in the bioplastic space. Some very big companies, Mitsubishi, Total, an oil company in France, Braskem, Brazilian.